Hello guys, welcome back to our brand new channel QA Simplified. So in today's video we will explore an important topic related to testing, that is the static testing versus dynamic testing. So these are two fundamental approaches in software testing, and understanding the difference between them is crucial for every tester. So let's begin with the static testing and dynamic testing and how they are getting different from each other. So agenda of our lecture is to get the exact definition of static and dynamic testing with the real life example, their advantages, limitations, their real life examples, and at the end we will go through the summary of our lecture. Okay, so let's begin. So first is what is static testing? So on the high level and in the understandable language, you will see what is static testing. So static testing is a preventive approach. So its name suggests static testing is a preventive approach. Means the static testing should be done before the actual deployment of the code. So it will involves reviewing the requirements, design and code, which helps to find in early stages of the errors. For example, in static testing, will include reviews, walkthroughs, inspections, static code analysis, like that. So it mainly focuses on the requirements and design documents. Uh, in the tester's perspective, the verification stage is came under the static testing. For example, whenever the tester writes the test cases and after completion of the test cases according to the forward traceability matrix or whatever requirement we have. So based on that, the tester will review the test cases whether all the acceptance criteria should be covered under the overall test cases. So it means he will define the coverage based upon the acceptance criteria and do the leakages of the test cases. Okay, so that is the static testing, and it's important with respect to the tester is related to the test cases review, test planning review. So let's begin with the dynamic testing. So as high level, dynamic testing is a detective approach. So for example, as static testing, it is a part of verification. So dynamic testing, it is a part of the validation. So dynamic testing should be performed once the actual code is getting deployed and final build is given to the dynamic testing or means to the tester. So at that time tester will perform the actual execution of the test cases and you will find out the defects. So that testing is called as a dynamic testing. So it mainly focuses on verifying the functionalities, performance and behavior of the application. Its examples are unit testing, integration testing, system testing, and acceptance testing. Also, it will cover regression testing, retesting, smoke testing, that type of testing. So here we will validate actual output with the expected output based on the whatever test cases we have written. So actual execution of test cases is done in the dynamic testing. So the key point of the dynamic testing is it ensures software works as expected according to the dynamic testing. Whereas in static testing, the key point is it refers to the saving the cost and effort, catching the defects early in the software development lifecycle. So static testing is important to avoid extra cost on the defect fixing, whereas the dynamic testing will refers to the finding out the defects after the code deployment. So we'll go through the difference of the static testing and dynamic testing. So the key differences between static and dynamic testing are static testing done without the code execution, whereas dynamic testing is done after the code is executed or the deployment. Whereas static testing find defects early, whereas dynamic testing find runtime errors. Static testing involves documents and reviews, whereas dynamic testing involves actual test cases execution. So here you can see on the screen we have one table which give us a brief picture about the difference between static testing and dynamic testing. Let's go one by one. So first we will consider the definitions. So definition of static testing is a testing without execution of code, whereas dynamic testing refers to the testing by executing the code, means the after deployment. So static testing is generally performed by developers or reviewers in respect to testers. Whenever test cases is getting reviewed by the colleagues, that is come under the static testing, whereas the dynamic testing is generally done by the testers or the QA teams. Examples of the static testing is code review, walkthrough, and inspection, whereas for dynamic testing, examples are unit testing, integration testing, and system testing. So we will see when the static testing will be done. So on the early stage of the SDLC process, the static testing has been done. So that's why it is cost effective. Whereas the dynamic testing should be done after the development of the particular functionality or the application. During that phase, the testing has happened. So generally, static testing is focuses on prevention of defects, whereas dynamic testing is detection of the defect. So this point is more important. What is the focus? So static testing focuses on prevention, where the dynamic testing is focuses on detection of the defects. Okay. So we will see what is the limitations and advantages of the static and dynamic testing. So static testing is early defect detection, it is a cost effective and cannot find runtime error, its is limitation. Whereas the dynamic testing ensure the software works as expected, validate the functionality. So it is their advantages, and limitation is it is more costly and time consuming because it is found at the later stage of software development life cycle. So whole the process should do again. For example, once the code is getting deployed and tester found the defect, so at that time you will create defect assigned to the developer should work on it and again deploy the code. So that is a lengthy process as well as costing process. Okay, so let's move to the real life example, then you can understand what exactly the static and dynamic testing is. So imagine you are reviewing a requirement document before code coding is begin, that is a static testing. Okay, so the exactly reviewing the document, like the technical document or the functional document, that is the static testing. Whereas later, when the feature is developed, you execute the test cases to check if it work correctly or not, so that is called as a dynamic testing. So generally in static testing, we cover the reviewing the requirements, code walkthroughs, Whereas in dynamic testing, we will cover running login functionalities, testing payment gateways. So that type of testing is covered in the dynamic testing. So on this overall lecture, our summary is both static and dynamic testing are essential because static testing is related to the prevention of defect, which is in the early stage of software development life cycle, whereas dynamic testing is the detection of the defect after development of the code. And the static testing is related to prevention of defects in the early. Dynamic testing is related to validate actual behavior of the system. So together they ensures high quality of the software. So these both things are very important. So I thought your confusion is get cleared on the static and dynamic testing. So we know that both static and dynamic testing are complementary. Static testing prevent defects early, whereas dynamic testing detects in the later stage. Okay, so that's it for our today's session. If you found the video is helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel QA Simplify and hit the bell icon. We will meet in our next interesting video. So let's stay tuned and follow for more updates.